Hello again, this is Michael, and welcome back. I know I've been away for a while, but here I am. And I'm sure you had no idea. You subscribed years ago, and you haven't heard from me. You figured I was done, and you didn't even notice. That's okay. I don't care. Anyways, I'm back, and we're going to do some Lightroom stuff here. What we're going to do today is we're going to show how to call attention to some elements in your image using just the radial filter. Maybe touch it up with a bit of the adjustment brush. But I'm scrolling through some images here that I had taken at Old World, Wisconsin, in Eagle, Wisconsin. I'm one of the organizers for the Milwaukee Photography Meetup Group, and this is one of the field trips we did this past year. Now, what I have here is some old school munchies. What they had is a little room where they had an oven, and they showed how they were making different bakery items, and they got the jug of water and a bowl of water and a shaker or something. This is not my final image, but this is what I did in Lightroom. And let's jump back real quick, and I'm going to hit my backspace key my backslash key right above enter. Show you what oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to go into develop first. There we go. And then let's get rid of that. There we go. That's my image. If I go ahead and do my backslash key, that is actually what my original image looks like. And it's not good. What happened is we had a big group of people walking around and didn't really have time to stop and set up the lights like I would like to. So what I did is I had a gray shirt I was wearing that day, and actually I turned the flash around and bounced the flash off of my gray shirt, and that's how I got what little illumination in this picture. It was actually very dark in here, so it is actually illuminated, but it is underexposed. You can see by our histogram up here, it's not quite where we would want it. Well, actually, that's actually where we want it. But if we hit reset and show the actual real image before we did anything, there we go. There is almost nothing in these last two areas here, and that's about a stop and a half that I would want to overexpose it. Not overexpose it, but to correct the exposure. To get a good exposure, I'd want to go up about a stop and a half. So actually, let's go ahead and test out that theory. Let's drag this exposure. Well, let's type in 1.5 for a stop and a half. And while it makes the bread, actually the bread's not too bad. I'm looking at these numbers. When I run my cursor over the bread, you're going to see these numbers change right here. Okay, and I'm not seeing anything that really goes crazy at all. Even over here where it looks like it might be overexposed, it's really not. Zoom in real quick here, and yeah, I'm not even really approaching 90 at all. I mean, if we go up here to, outside, there we go. Definitely we're at, all 99 right there. Some of these smaller areas 97, 98. So that's definitely way up there. But this is actually properly exposed, which is good. So yes. Stop and a half is about where I wanted to go. But that's not what I got when I shot my original picture. It was about a stop and a half underexposed. Now, for what we're doing today, that is just fine. Because to call attention to certain elements in your picture, you want them to be brighter than the rest of your picture. So we're going to call attention to these elements that are on the board here. And because the rest of our image is underexposed, we're just going to let that be and expose these elements properly using the radial filter. Alright, so let's go ahead and we got two filters here that we're going to talk about, the radial filter and the adjustment brush. You might have used the adjustment brush already, but you might not have used the radial filter, so let's go ahead and click on that. Alright, right now it is set up for exposure. We don't really need that. What we actually want to do is, because we know that it looks pretty good at a stop and a half, 1.5, that's what we're going to put. We're going to bump our contrast up maybe 15. Highlights and shadows we'll leave alone. Clarity, let's go ahead and really kick that up, maybe about 30. And same thing with saturation, bring it up to 30. Sharpness we'll leave alone. Noise, moire, diffringe we'll leave alone. Color, we are going to play with that, but not right now. Feathering, we will leave it at 50. And invert mask, we will get to that in just a second. Okay? So we have all our different changes we want to make here. Our adjustment, contrast, clarity, saturation. Okay? We're going to take these crosshairs that we got from we're on our filter now. Okay? And we want to click right in the center and then drag out. And what happened here? Well, what we're doing is we are doing that adjustment to everything in the picture except for what we just made a mask on. So that's when we get down to here, this little invert mask, and we put the picture back to the way it was and just do those adjustments on these little muffins or whatever they are here. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this dot in the center and click on duplicate. Now you see the muffins get really overexposed. Well, that's because we've got the same filter on there twice. So we're just going to click and drag it out of the way, put it over this piece of bread. Let's go ahead and rotate it just a little bit, shrink that down a tad, and it can be bigger than your actual item, because remember, these edges are feathered, so we're not worried about that. Let's go ahead and duplicate it again. Bring it over to this red picture here. Rotate it. Maybe fatten it up a bit and make it a little shorter. There we go. Leave it like that. And again, we're going to duplicate it. Move it over to this thing here. There's a little bowl of water. Let's see, probably right about there is good. And then one last time, duplicate and bring it over here to this little shaker thingy. Now, because of the odd shape of this thing, we're seeing that behind it we are kind of overexposing, or we're changing the exposure back here a little bit, but we'll fix that in just a second. Alright, so we got all of our elements standing out pretty nice. What we're going to do though is I'm looking at this picture, and it's a really neat color. It's got that, patinaed red and all that. It looks really nice, but just because I like color in my pictures, we're going to click on that little color box and select a color. Now we could make it any color we want. If you look at the jug right now, as I move this along, it's really changing the color a lot. Green and yellow, and come back to red here. Now I don't want it like screaming red, but let's bring it down to maybe, I'm all the way to the left here, and let's go maybe down about half. See, our saturation here is at about 50%, and that's kind of about where I want it. That looks pretty good. Alright, now this little bowl of water, because it's a little darker, that exposure of a stop and a half didn't quite make it, so let's go ahead and actually bring that up a little bit more. Maybe to 2 1/4 stops. That's not bad. Alright. This one still it looks a bit much to me. Let's maybe try the contrast and see if that changes things at all. Again, I don't want to go too crazy with it, but I think actually bringing up the contrast and not touching the exposure was okay. This one, I think I want to jump the contrast and maybe even the clarity a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. That's nice. Okay, let's go ahead and click on Done. And if we click on our backslash right above our Enter key on our keyboard, we can see that is our original picture. It looks like we just took a black brush and just brushed everything out, but that's actually our original picture. And go back to what we just did. It actually looks really nice. It's calling attention to those elements, is exactly what we wanted to do. Now, like I said before, we have a little problem right about here where it got the exposure changed. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that adjustment brush. Alright, we're going to change it to exposure. We got all these selections here, of course, but we're just going to do the exposure. And we're going to bring it down by, let's say, bring it down by about a stop. A little more than a stop, I guess. Because remember we overexposed all this stuff by a stop and a half, so that's what we did back here. We want to change that and put it back to where it was, or at least close to where it was. The wheel on my mouse will adjust the size of my brush. I just need it right about here. And I'm not going to do a lot. I'm just going to click right here, and maybe right up here too, just to kind of darken it up a little bit. Just a little touch up. I don't want to do anything too crazy. Maybe down there too. Nope, that's not that last one. I'm going to hit Control Z and get rid of that last one. So that's good enough for me. Let's go ahead and click on Done. Now I think just all we really need now is a little bit of a crop. And again, you know that you can go ahead and click the O key and get your different crop options. You know, that's the Fibonacci golden circle there, and 4x5, 5x7, and 8x10. Just a grid, and your rule of thirds, and diagonal rule of thirds, and some other crazy diagonal stuff, and modified rule of thirds. But for this one, I think we'll just use the regular rule of thirds. And I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit. Bring it over here. Let's make sure that that's not quite a right angle here because of the angle of our shot, but let's see if we can't maybe straighten it up a little bit. Well, maybe not. Let's just keep an eye on our jug then, make sure our jug is standing up sort of straight anyways. And that might be where we want to go. Let's bring in this side a little bit more. Okay, and with our rule of thirds guide going on our upper third line, of course, is going through all of our upper elements, and our lower guide here is going through our lower elements. It all looks pretty good. Tell you what, there's one thing I want to do. I just want to grab that adjustment brush, and instead of underexposing, I'm going to overexpose a little bit. Just these little leaves, because they are part of what they were doing there. And maybe clarity. Go crazy on the clarity. Not too crazy on the clarity. Maybe that'll be pretty good right there. Okay, done. Okay, so what actually started out as an underexposed, flat, boring picture, we now have some elements on our picture that actually looks pretty good. So that's one application of it. Let's go ahead and grab one more picture really quick. Go to our library. Let's see here. Danielle headshots. I know we have a good shot there. In Danielle headshots, let me grab just the 4-star pictures. Danielle is actually a really awesome model in the Chicago area. If you live in the Chicago area, you probably saw her in some local advertisements a while back. Worked with her a few years back at the studio. So, anyways, we are going to take this picture right here, and the lighting is okay, not great, but again, if we look at our histogram here, I would much rather have more information on this side of the image than down here, but that's okay. I'm not worried about that right now. Shot it in RAW, even though it's an older camera. Which camera was this? This was the something camera. Library. This was the D70S a few years back. That's what I was shooting. Anyways. Okay, what we want to do now is something similar to what we did in our last picture, but a little different. Let's go ahead and grab our radial filter again. And this time, and just so we can see what it's doing, I'm going to bring the exposure all the way down. I'm going to click right in the center of her and bring up that right there. Go ahead and tilt it around. Play with the feathering a little bit to see. This is actually what our feathering does, if you didn't know already. but kind of open it up a little bit on her, but not too much. So that's actually pretty good. Now, what I'm doing is this is almost like a vignette. You could actually do vignetting this way if you wanted to, but it can be a little bit much if you're not careful. So what I want to do is I want to have our exposure maybe say negative, type it in here, negative 2.5. How's that? That's actually pretty good. Our contrast, let's bring that down. Just kind of drag it a little bit. Didn't want to leave it on 13 there. I got triskaidekaphobia. If you don't know what that means, look it up. Highlights and shadows, again, we'll leave it alone. Clarity, why? 13 again, gee whiz. Fine. Saturation, down just a little bit. Sharpness, down just a little bit. And what that's doing now, it's affecting everything except for her because it's creating a mask over her, right? Okay. So that's pretty good. If we click on Done, let's go ahead and click on that backslash again to see where we're at. And again, right now we're standing out pretty good. It's almost like a vignette is what we're doing. And that's fine. But at this point now, we want to make some more adjustments because we can actually bring out some more detail in her dress and make her stand out just a little bit more. So I went a little dark on the wall back here. You might have been watching and figured I went a little dark, but actually there's a reason for that. So I'm going to bring a little bit back of it, a little bit of it back, maybe, oh geez, no more than half a stop here. Probably about a third of a stop. That's probably good enough. Contrast, again, I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. Highlights and shadows, we'll leave alone. Whites and blacks, leave it alone. But we will bring up our clarity. 30 right there. Our vibrance, I like playing with vibrance. I like color in my pictures. And a little bit of saturation, not too much saturation, just a little bit. Okay. Not bad, I like that. Again, let's go ahead and see our before and after. Blah. Nice. Blah. Nice. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a quick crop again. And we got our thirds there. Let's go ahead and bring it in so she's pretty much centered on that third line. Right there. In most pictures, what you want to do is you want to take one of these intersections, and if you can, put it on an eye. But just because of the way the picture is going, we don't want quite that much. We want to show her a little bit more, so we're going to keep it down by about her chin. But we definitely have her on a 1/3. We can even bring her in just a little bit more. I think that's pretty good right there. See how that looks? Yeah, I like that a lot. If we wanted to, we could go back to the Radial Filter and even darken it up a little bit more, but I think we're okay right where we're at. Leave it at 262 there. Alright, so that is about it for now. I appreciate you watching. If you have not yet clicked on subscribe, please do. I will be dropping a lot more videos in the coming months, and if you subscribe, you get to see them right away. That'd be awesome, and I appreciate it. And once again, this is Michael. We did Lightroom tips here. We're bringing out elements in our pictures using just the adjustment brush and Radial Filter. So again, thanks for watching. This is Michael, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.